Have you ever said yes when you mean no? Hey everybody, this is Mike Erlob with another episode coming at you of Power Your Life. So I want to share a little something with you before we get started. Yesterday morning, my daughter had come to me and she had asked if she could create a painting room in our basement. Now, I told her that, yep, we could do that. We could clear out part of the furnace room for her. And, then this got me thinking about something that had happened over the summer. And this summer, my daughter had taken it upon herself to paint on our driveway. Now, she's very artistic and she really likes to create things and she likes to make these cool little TikTok videos and just all this stuff she likes to create. And like way back when she was younger, she used to do YouTube videos and, of course, got into making slime and all that kind of stuff. Well, she had always done these paintings, sidewalk chalk, in our driveway. And she always created some really cool designs. So, when she came to me one night this summer, and be honest with you, I really wasn't paying attention. And she asked if she could do some painting in the driveway. And I'm thinking, oh, sidewalk chalk. Yeah, go ahead, Kaya. Not a problem. Yeah, go ahead. Well, little did I know that she was actually going to paint on the driveway with her acrylic paints. And when it was done, she had created this permanent painting in the driveway. Now, at first, when I looked at it, I got a little upset, but because it was a permanent paint, and it wasn't going to go away. But then I really looked at it, and I'm like, man, this thing is cool. I mean, it is really neat. And, it made me think, well, what a blessing this is, because it was really an awesome design. And, maybe I'm a little biased because it's my daughter, but, I really thought what an amazing expression of creativity that this was. And you see, that's what I think right now, that creativity at times really seems to be missing today, especially in our kids. There's just so much of, playing on video games, iPhones, iPads, tablets, instead of going outside where they have to use their own creativity, their own imagination to entertain themselves. And this got me thinking that, slowly I think that our society is starting to lose its ability to express themselves, create, and communicate effectively. Everything is just so focused on just our devices. Many of us just don't talk anymore with our friends and family. It's just all texting and scrolling. And, I really think that that's a shame. But, it's not too late. And I don't think it's too late for any of us. I would challenge you just to take time today, just to sit down with your family. Talk to them about anything. Just communicate with them. And then go outside, be creative, come up with something that's fun to do that doesn't involve your devices. And I guarantee if you do that, you'll be glad you did. So speaking of communicating, how many of you out there have trouble saying no? I know that, many times I have had this problem, running a business. I really, believe it or not, there was a time where I had a hard time saying no. I just wanted to say yes to everything. And so often for many of us, we just want to make everyone happy. And I think that, the fact that we're coming up on the holidays here really soon, it's going to be Thanksgiving in a couple weeks and then Christmas. This is really a good subject for us to talk about and explore, because the ability to say no is actually something that is going to be it's really important for every person to be able to do that in a healthy way, because as we're going to talk about, it has a direct impact on your overall health. So what happens is when you have that problem and you don't want to say no and you say yes when you really meant no, what happens to you is that, and it happens to me, and I'm speaking from personal experience, is that I just ended up taking on too much, and that this in turn just creates more problems and more stress for myself. Does any of that sound familiar to you guys? So tell you what, let's talk about why this is, and let's talk about how that can affect your health. Simply put, okay, the word no is nothing more. It's just a boundary about something that you don't want to do, that you don't agree to do, or is not yours to do in the first place. But why do so many of us have such a hard time using that word? Well, there was an article that came out a while back from the Psychology Today magazine, actually in November of 2013. And this article, they discussed that, the word no, about, hey, why is this such a negative word? Why is there so many negative connotations attached to it? Well, in the article, they talked about when you use the word no, it's often viewed as the slamming shut of a door or the slamming of a window, right? That just cuts you off from others. And I think that this is a way a lot of us see that is, that we don't want to cut ourselves off from others. We don't want to, push people away or push things back. And we view the word as being, just that. But you see, I think for most of us, and this was really highlighted in that article, that many of us, we often fail to see the surge of strength that saying no can give us. You see, just like I said, no is often confused with a negative attitude, but it really doesn't have to be. The use of the word no is actually an affirmation of the self that acknowledges your own personal responsibility. You see, no can be that barrier that establishes and maintains the health of you. No helps us to see that we are the agents of our own limits. Because let's face it, we all have limits. There's only so many hours in a day. There's only so many, groups that you can participate in. There's only so much work that you can take on. Let's talk about that a little bit more. For those of you that, are at the office job, how many times have you just told everybody yes, 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 and then that work just gets piled on and piled on. And the next thing you know, you're looking at it and you're like, there is no way humanly possible I can even get to any of this, right? And then what happens? How does that make you feel? What happens to you internally? The problem is with this is that we have our own fear. There is a fear of what will happen when we say the word no. That fear is things such as, I feel I have to justify myself, or I'm afraid that you won't like me, or I'm afraid that I'll make you angry or disappointed with me. Or some of us, you might feel that you're being mean. Okay, so then what happens? Then we end up doing things like, well, I feel like I should say yes, but I don't really want to. Or I say, I don't know, or maybe instead of no, and then you never get back to them about it. How many of you have done that? As a way to kind of get out of it, you just say, oh, maybe, and then you never address it again, right? So what does that do to the relationship of the person that you just said that to? It hurts it. And then, of course, the big one is, I say yes, but I mean no. So here's why you should learn to let go of these fears and why you should say no more often. First of all, I already touched upon it. You don't have an infinite store of time and energy, okay? There's only 24 hours in a day, and you should be sleeping 8 of those hours, okay? You got to have time for your family. You got to have time for your loved ones. You got to have time for work. You've got to have that time. So you have to learn to pick and choose what you can do and what you can't do. And that brings me into that point number 2, is that some things are more important than others, okay? So it can't be that you say yes to everything that comes your way, because you have to prioritize it. The third is that each of us need to set and respect their own boundaries, okay? It's an affirmation of yourself. And when you say no, it makes your yes more meaningful. Let's think about that for a minute there. If you say yes to everything, eventually, saying yes doesn't really carry any weight with it, right? When in fact, you want it to. So, when you use no and you set those boundaries, and I tell my kids, no, you can't have that candy bar. When in fact, yes, they could easily have that candy bar, but I know it's not good for them. So just because I can do it doesn't mean that I should do it. And so, we say no. But then if you say that enough times, the minute you do say yes, all of a sudden, my kids light up and they're like, oh, wow, he said yes. So, there's power in that. So when should you say no? Okay, well, there's a few kind of a litmus test that you can use and that I use to determine when I'm going to say yes or when I'm going to say no. So when should you say no? First of all, when it keeps me true, or it keeps you true to your principles and values. Let me say that again. You should say no when it keeps you true to your principles and values. Okay? The second is when it keeps you focused on your own goals. The third one is when you need the strength to change course. Okay? If you feel yourself getting sucked down a rabbit hole, all right? How many of you guys have done that? How many of you have been on the internet and you start searching something and then you find this link and then you find that link and then next thing you know, you have been on the internet for 2 hours researching something that should have taken you 5 minutes, right? So you have to be able to tell yourself, no, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. I need the strength to stay on course and to stay on the path that I'm on. And then, of course, the big one is you should say no when it protects you from harm, danger, or abuse. Okay? So why are we talking about this? What does this have to do with your health? Well, let's think about the last time where you said yes to something when really you meant no. So in other words, you said yes to something you really didn't want to do. Did it create stress in your life? And was that stress negative? You see, many times it is. So many of us are wired to avoid conflict. And you know, it kind of becomes this motto, hey, we're going to go along to get along, right? Well, that can be more harmful to you than you realize, because although saying yes, can avoid conflict, it's going to create so many bigger problems for you. See, taking on too many responsibilities, too many tasks, too many jobs, or the like, is going to spread yourself too thin. The next thing you know, you're just running around the room like a chicken with your heads cut off, right? I mean, you're just doing here, you're doing there, it's just creating stress. All of a sudden, you're not becoming a very nice person. You're snapping at people, you're becoming, more irritated, and that results in increased stress to your body. And this increased stress is going to lead to physical problems. Now, we've touched upon this in some previous videos, where now what happens here is when you hit a stressful time, okay, the sympathetic nervous system, part of the autonomic nervous system, it gets activated. This is your fight or flight response. So it gets activated and it causes this alarm to go off in your head, okay, and in your whole body, really. And what happens then is your body, in response to that stress, is going to produce a hormone called cortisol. Cortisol is a stress hormone. Now, it has its place and it's important, but when cortisol is produced too much, it can have some really negative effects on your health. First of all, your heart rate and your blood pressure both increase. Your muscles start to tighten up and you gain weight. Cortisol actually causes the body to store more fat. You can't sleep or relax. This lowers your immune system. The pH of the body actually is lowered and starts to become more acidic. And if left uncorrected and this becomes chronic, the result is a chronic state of inflammation in the body, which then leads to infections, heart disease, stroke, joint and muscle pain, or even early death. Okay? So, it goes without saying, I mean, time and time again, science has proven that even perceived mental, psychological stress, okay, will manifest as physical problems within the body. And learning how to say no is one of those key skills that you really have to master in your life to lower your stress levels, especially at the times of the holidays, and just keep yourself on the straight and narrow. So how can you say no nicely, right? That's a really tricky way. You see, many times it's not what we say, but how we say it that determines how others receive it, okay? So I'm going to say that again. It's not what we say, but it's how we say it that determines how it is received. So here's some suggestions that you could try, and try these responses instead of just saying no, all right? So you could say, I'll think about it, all right? Give yourself a little bit of time. Give yourself a little bit of pause, to evaluate the request that's being made of okay? But don't use that response, okay, if you're not getting back to them. So you only use that response if you really will think about it, all right? And then you really will get back to that person with either a yes or no. You can't use that as just to put off saying no, all right? There's some softer language that you could choose, such as, hey, you know, I'd prefer not to. You can say it calmly. You know, another one that you could use, and you could, you know, this works well at work, is you could say, you know, that's really not my responsibility. So there are so many other ways to say no gracefully. I'm sure you can think up of many of those, you know, to do. But just like I said, you know, the holidays are right around the corner. And that tendency is to say yes to so many things that oftentimes you really should say no to. So just remember, okay, saying no is not a bad thing to do. In fact, it can save your life. So that leads me, I almost forgot, if you need help fixing back pain, all right, we are now offering our new breakthrough exam for only $49. And you can set up your session just by going to the link listed below. As always, I'm going to leave you guys with this really inspiring and thought-provoking quote from author Josh Billings. He said, "Half of the troubles of this life can be traced to saying yes too quickly and not saying no soon enough." So until next time, power your life and keep moving forward.